The afternoon sun stretched lazily across the porch of a small white house in Vermont. The air was cool, carrying that familiar scent of pine and freshly cut grass. An old woman named Evelyn Carter sat in her rocking chair, wrapped in a warm knitted shawl. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, and her gentle smile seemed to hold 1,000 stories. Beside her sat Lily, her 16-year-old granddaughter, with her chin resting on her knees. The two often spent evenings together like this, Lily asking questions about the old days, and Evelyn answering with that soft, knowing tone of hers. "Grandma," Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence, "Mom told me you used to be a dancer, but she also said there was someone you loved before Grandpa. Is that true?" Evelyn chuckled softly, her eyes brightening with surprise. "Your mother still remembers that, huh?" "Yes, my dear, that's true." Lily leaned forward eagerly. "Will you tell me, please?" Evelyn looked out toward the golden maple trees. The leaves swayed gently, almost as if whispering memories from long ago. After a deep breath, she began. "I was 18, Evelyn said softly, and the world felt brand new. It was the summer of 1954, the kind of summer when the sky never seemed to end and dreams felt close enough to touch. Her family lived on a small farm just outside a town called Maple Ridge. Every morning, Evelyn helped her mother milk the cows before heading into town to work at Harper's Diner, a little roadside place where truck drivers, soldiers, and high school kids all gathered. "That's where I met him," she said, her voice drifting. "His name was James Walker. He came in one afternoon, wearing a faded leather jacket and a grin that could melt snow in December. James was new in town, working at the auto repair shop down the road. He was kind, funny, and always left bigger tips than he should. Evelyn noticed how he always sat by the window, sketching in a small notebook while waiting for his coffee. One day, I finally asked what he was drawing, she said. He showed me a picture of the diner, the neon lights, the dusty road, even me standing by the counter. I couldn't believe how beautiful he made everything look. James smiled at her and said, "You make it beautiful." Evelyn laughed softly at the memory. No one had ever said something like that to me before. Over the next few weeks, they began meeting after her shifts ended. Sometimes they'd walk to the lake and watch the fireflies. Other nights, James would bring his old radio, and they'd dance barefoot on the grass under the moonlight. He wasn't rich, and neither was I, Evelyn said, her eyes distant. But those moments, those were the richest days of my life. James told her about his dream. He wanted to go to New York to study architecture. Evelyn had her own dream, to become a professional dancer. One night, sitting by the lake, James took her hand and said, "Let's promise something. No matter where we go or how long it takes, we'll chase our dreams. And if we're meant to meet again, life will bring us back together. Evelyn smiled, remembering the warmth of that night. I promised him, she whispered. We both did. But that summer ended too soon. James received a letter from an architecture program in New York. He was accepted with a scholarship. Evelyn was proud and heartbroken. On his last night in town, they met one final time at the diner. It was almost closing time, and the jukebox played softly in the background. Elvis Presley's Love Me Tender. He walked me home that night. Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly. The stars were bright, and the air smelled like rain. When we reached my gate, he looked at me for a long moment and said, Don't wait for me, Evie. Life's too short to wait. Tears filled her eyes even now. I told him I wouldn't, but deep down I knew I would, at least for a while. James hugged her tightly. Life moved on. Evelyn became a dance teacher at the town's community center. She married Thomas Carter, a kind man who owned the local bookstore. They raised 2 children, Lily's mother being one of them. I loved your grandfather dearly, Evelyn said softly. He was gentle, patient, and he made me laugh every day. But a small part of my heart always remembered that boy by the lake. Years passed. The diner closed down. The auto shop became a supermarket. And the world changed. Televisions, cell phones, computers. But Evelyn never forgot the sound of that summer wind or the promise they made. Then, one winter morning in 1994, nearly 40 years later, Evelyn received a letter. The envelope was yellowed. The ink slightly faded. It was from James Walker. I couldn't believe it, she said, her voice full of wonder. He had found my address through the town records. He wrote that he'd become an architect in Chicago and that he often thought of Maple Ridge and of me. He ended the letter with a simple line. If you ever find yourself near Lakewood Park that spring, Evelyn took the train to Chicago. Her heart raced like she was 18 again. She wore a soft blue dress and carried the same old locket James had given her back in 1954. When she arrived at Lakewood Park, she saw him, an older man now, his hair gray, his eyes still warm. He stood under a cherry blossom tree, holding a small sketchbook. He looked at me and smiled, Evelyn said, her voice trembling. And in that moment, the years disappeared. We were just 2 kids again, standing by the lake. They spent the afternoon talking about life, dreams, loss, and love. James had never married. I guess I was waiting for something I couldn't explain, he told her. Evelyn told him about her family, her husband, her children, her students, and how she had never stopped dancing. As the sun began to set, James handed her the sketchbook. Inside were drawings. It was the same picture he'd shown me all those years ago. she said softly. He'd carried it with him his whole life. Before they said goodbye, James asked, "Do you still dance, Evelyn?" She laughed. "Not as gracefully as I used to." He stood up, extended his hand, and said, "Then let's dance one last time." There, under the pink blossoms and fading sunlight, they danced, slow and quiet, like the world had stopped. The porch fell silent again. Lily's eyes glistened with emotion. "That's so beautiful, Grandma. You really saw him again after all those years?" Evelyn nodded with a peaceful smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes love doesn't end with forever. Sometimes it ends with a dance, and that's enough." Lily leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder. "Do you ever miss him?" "Every now and then," Evelyn whispered. "But when the wind blows through those trees, I like to think it's him reminding me of that summer. And I smile. The sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink." Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the cool breeze on her face. Somewhere in the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of life, she could almost hear a familiar tune, the melody of their last dance. Years later, after Evelyn passed away peacefully, Lily found a small box in her grandmother's dresser. Inside it was the locket, the letter from James, and a note written in Evelyn's handwriting. "For Lily, never be afraid to love, and never regret it when it ends. Some promises live forever, not in time, but in the heart." Lily smiled through her tears, feeling that same gentle warmth her grandmother had always carried. She stood by the window that evening, watching the sunset glow over the trees, and whispered softly to the wind, "Keep dancing, Grandma. Keep dancing."